All right, ladies and gentlemen, get ready to dive into the world of this next guest. He, a former D1 swimmer, call him the human torpedo, is known for making moves in and out of the water. The driving force behind the Forever Athlete brand, dedicated to uplifting and supporting fellow athletes post competitive careers. With his natural ability to flow through life and embrace challenges, he is not only a master of his craft, but a talented flow hacker. And dare I say, a remarkable flow of hair that's a sight to behold. Sober living, exemplifying resilience, and inspiring others through his genuine nature. He is a true man in the arena. So without further ado, please join me in providing a warm welcome for my man, Mr. Cory Camp.
Where's the
God, noise is like, I need to put that into the podcast now. It's just natural.
Perfect.
It's happening out there. They can't hear it here.
Thank you for having me, man. And I really honored by the introduction and just excited to dive in and just have conversations with you today and see what comes up.
Yeah, man. We our friendship has evolved as friendships evolve when you prioritize those relationships, and it's been a beautiful sight to see. And I've always resonated with you when it comes to competing in life and being an athlete and building community around that. And obviously, not much on the swimming part, but that's coming for me.
We're getting there.
That is my growth as being a better athlete. And yeah, the big part, man, I got a lot of gratitude for you and how you show up and how you bring people together, which is what, as we know, and stuff that we're going to talk about in this podcast, why it's so important.
Yeah, man. I appreciate that. I think I'm trying to think. We first met here at Squatch.
Yeah, we met here. Yeah.
Met through here. And then all I remember is like, I had a brief interaction here. Then you were out in LA competing for High Rocks. And I was like,
next thing you know, I was sitting on his couch.
Yeah, I was like, if you need, like, doors open. And props to you, man, because I don't want to say I say that to everyone. I truly do to lead with that, because my goal is always to make people feel welcome, feel seen in whatever space that they walk into, but truly mean it. But not too many people actually take people up on that.
Yeah.
So it was really cool to have that experience with you, staying with me, being able to help you get ready to go and compete there, watching you go do that. And divine timing, if I remember correctly, I think I was like involved in a weekend long like coaching intensive that weekend too. So it was cool to just be like, all right, man, like my space is your space, but I'm going to be locked online for 8 hours doing this. Go do your thing.
And I think, and that was a great experience. I ended up kicking ass in High Rocks and on the podium. And
you shared your HRV, your Whoop data with me. I remember checking it.
You're like, don't look at
before
it.
I was like, bro, whatever you do, just don't look at your score this morning.
But I think, to your point too, I believe people who also live life that way, I want to help people be seen, loved, and understood. So when you offer and lead with that, I can appreciate, because I know I would do the same thing.
Yeah.
If some people aren't in that headspace of being more, not that it's a bad thing, it's just like we're not used to it, then you're less receptive of that type of love.
Yeah, and I think I've learned over the years, it's less about like, I'm doing this because it will be reciprocated down the road.
Exactly.
And instead just doing this because it's the right thing to do. It's what I want to lead with.
Yeah.
And then every once in a while it will reciprocate. I remember being in a pinch a few months later here and needed a place to crash a night before going to the airport the next morning. And I just hit you up and you're like, dude, of course, come on by. Couch is yours. Oh man.
Yeah. That's to everyone visiting, by the way. You guys are welcome.
Yeah. But I think it's important for people to recognize like just different stages of love, different stages of how you show up in relationship, not just in like romantic relationship, but relationship with just people in general. It's not a tick for tack. It's just hey man, like this is the right thing to do. I'm going to go do it. And when you lead with that, you're taken care of as
100%,
well.
100%. I find you to be a great connector for people as well. And I know you came to the Squatch Spartan, the men's only workout, and we went around and shared identities. And that was, if I recall correctly, that's the one that you chose.
That was my one I'm feeling right now.
Yeah. Let's lean into that. Why is that? How long have you been feeling that? When did you realize that's what your positioning in life is currently? And yeah, let's start with that.
Yeah, I think I realized probably 5-6 years ago that I was on to something in that regard. How I was going to accomplish it, I don't know. And truthfully, I still don't know. I'm like leaving that up to be discovered on a day-to-day basis. It is constantly changing, and I'm just trying to be present here in that moment as it is. I think 5, 6 years ago, I started to really do some work when swimming ended and started to peel back. What was it that I really loved about the sport? Yeah, the container for me to push myself, improve myself, and discover more about me. And that was fantastic. And that had a lot of value. But I really valued the relationships and what had happened when then I could go to a random meet and just connect with literally anyone. It didn't matter how fast or how slow they were. Like we had that thing in common and it was like no time had passed since the last meet I saw them or whatever it was. And so when I started to recognize that, I was like, huh, I really enjoy getting to know people, know their heart, know what they're interested in, what they're curious about, what their values are, and then connecting with other people. It's okay. You guys have very similar life paths. I don't know how you all will what you'll do with that, but I think if you're in the same container, some good stuff will happen from that. And I've realized that my role over the past few years is just to continue to do that. And it's cool to see, man. I had 2 girls I was doing these, virtual coffee hours through Forever Athlete, where just getting athletes from all over the world to come together on a Sunday morning, and we just spend an hour just chatting, chopping it up, meeting one another, and I had 2 girls this past week, meet in San Francisco for the first time ever. They had met through those virtual coffee hours
Mm,
a year and a half ago, and they remembered to stay in touch with one another, and then they both sent me the picture, and they're like, "You'll never believe who I just hung out with." I was like,
that's so
"Dude,
cool.
this made my week." That's the
Yeah.
highlight of my week right there is to see those things coming together.
That's beautiful, and that happened just organically too,
Yeah,
by you leading with love and leading with your heart and doing what you felt called to do, and
yeah,
I think there's a cool thing, that you shared with the swimmers. You could have maybe not even met these people, but there's you guys are on the same wavelength, and I think you see that between people who speak the same language and maybe live in America and don't see a lot of people around their culture, then they see those people and, "Oh," it just creates
yeah,
this deeper level connection that other people can't quite enter. And I think it's the same thing when it comes to athletes. Like athletes, you had this understanding of yourselves and the work that you put in, especially when it's specific to a certain sport, that you're
mm,
like, oh, we're on the same language. This is cool. And I imagine as you age, like you don't want to lose that. Like you want to be able to keep getting that spark in life and be around that energy that someone who really understands what you've gone through at periods of your life. Cause I'm sure you went through some struggles within this, even the competitive space, and to be able to talk to someone who can relate to that, I'm sure has been super impactful.
yeah, I think there are certain things that it's one thing to read about it, it's one thing to listen to a podcast about it, it's a
Yeah.
whole other thing to actually have that been your life and really lived it, especially in the athlete world and the culture of athletics, especially when I was coming up in it. And a lot of that rooted in you have to sacrifice
Mhm.
everything or you have to sacrifice most things in your life to be successful at this. And even within different every sport has a different sacrifice associated with it. If you boil it down to it, yeah, it's really
That's why I didn't wrestle in college.
yeah, like what it takes to be successful and what it means to really put your head down and really just work for certain things, which is what I really realized when I first ended that and tried to go into like the corporate world. I was refinancing mortgages, my first job. I was really struggling to connect with a lot of the coworkers that I had. The ones that I did connect with were actually, lo and behold, like former D1
Athletes.
athletes or some sort of athlete at a college level. I was like, huh, what if I just started connecting with more of these athletes? Because we have similar pain points, we have similar struggles, we had similar past experiences, and now we are seeing the world as it is now through the same lens. But what if we do so not in a way of like just reminiscing and being stuck in our past story, but instead using our past experiences to
Create new
be
ones.
curious and create new ones now in this life, in this season. And that was when some stuff really started to shift, which was fun.
It started to click for you
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. You start to realize when you think of oftentimes why do people get into sport in the first place? It's usually because it's this playground that we get to discover who we are in the process, right? Like I'm talking early stage sport, like when you first found wrestling or when I first found swimming, whatever it may be, it is this discovery like no other.
Mm.
And you start to gain confidence, you start to gain all this stuff. And what's actually happening is you're experiencing flow. And the beauty of flow is oftentimes like when you're having a macro flow episode, so to speak, we can get into the neuroscience of all this if you'd like, but on the shorter end of the spectrum, we have micro flow sessions is where like you just drop in and out of flow here and there. You're just flirting with it rather than actually being immersed in the moment, which would be these bigger life altering macro flow moments. And in those macro flow moments, you really lose your sense of self in the bigger picture. So athletes experience that oftentimes in team sports, they lose their sense of self for identity and the self of the team
Yeah.
and the working towards that common goal. And there's
It's
those
very community driven
parameters.
too. That's like survival of the community versus survival of the fittest, right?
100%. And as humans, we are driven towards those experiences oftentimes because on the flip side of that, coming out of those, our sense of self is actually stronger after losing
Mm,
our sense of self, right?
mm.
If you look at a really fabulous book I read last year, was called it was Why God Won't Go Away, The Neuroscience of Religion. And spoiler alert, like why God won't go away is because in religious practices, it doesn't matter if it's Christianity, Buddhism, like whatever you believe in, you're going through flow experiences where you lose your sense of self in the congregation, in a part of this community, this church, and then you come out of that feeling like this renewed sense of self. You have this bigger purpose now in this world. You are meant to, whether that be bring people together, whatever that calling is that you experience while you're in those flow moments, you take that confidence with you
Mm.
afterwards.
There's so much I want to go into there, but I want to go down a different route of sense of self, a
Mm,
more of a colluded one, a clouded
yeah,
one. I know we both relate to this chapter of our lives. Mine was post college, end of college. I think yours is similar, post college, and drinking a lot of alcohol and doing things that were less fulfilling in life, and maybe having a loss of identity.
yeah,
And that sense of self, when people go down those routes, you have no actual sense of self. You're not flowing through life. You're moving through
yeah,
life, but there's nothing intentional happening. There's no presence happening. You start losing awareness of who you actually are. And I want to start with that and go down that journey for you.
yeah,
And like, when did that begin? And what was like the identities? Because like at the end of the day, when you have sport and you have structure and you have community, you have school, like those are things that you can follow. It's like a routine, right?
mm,
And then you get out of that routine and you get into a whole new world and you lose that sense of community. Then we start losing sense of self because your self, as you said, was connected at some point to your
yeah.
team, your identity. So how did that loss of identity impact you to go down this route that we could call it wasn't very supportive of your higher self?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we have to be very wary of what I would call either false identity or false confidence, false connection, right? And that often is a result of things that are surface level temptation. They provide something like really quick hit in this moment versus deeper level of enjoyment, deeper level of connection. I was actually having this conversation with Gus yesterday on a ruck. And I was like, yeah, man, it's really easy here in the Austin community to go around and just go surface level with 1,000 different communities. And that's what I found post swimming was I felt lost because the community that I had, the team that I had, it was caked into my schedule. I'm seeing them 10 plus times a week through practices, seeing them in the dining hall, I'm seeing them in the weight room, I'm seeing them at the home that I live in
They're your
because I'm
life.
living with teammates. They're everything, right? I'm
Yeah.
doing life with them. And so this is especially true for athletes, but a lot of college kids experience this when college ends. That's the only time that all of your best friends are within like a 3 mile square radius
Who's your
of
tribe?
where you're at. And so when you lose that tribe, then you're starting to go out into the quote unquote real world and you're starting to reevaluate who is it
Scary.
now? Who makes it now? And it's a big ask, I think, at 22. And that was what I found myself was I was following false confidence. I was following false temptations, things that just like really weren't true to me and what I actually wanted deep down in my core. But on the surface, they were appealing. So that was why I took that job in the first place. It was the highest paying salary that I got offered. You're 22 years old. My first career choice of going physical therapy was off the table because I was so locked in on swimmer identity that student identity did not
Yeah.
take any precedence, and I didn't have the GPA to get into school. But instead, I had a 60K offer letter plus commission. I was like, all right,
Let's go.
cool, man. Like, I'm going to be successful. I'm going to be the first of my old teammates to $100,000, and I'm going to show them like
Yeah.
I can be successful in this next thing.
And then we get there.
And then I got there, and it was like, okay, now what? But I actually didn't get there in that job, which was
Oh, wow.
the fun part with my story. Like, I after 8 months of that, I was just like, this. I started to feel it just didn't feel authentic. It didn't feel like me. It started off with a lot of, and we can talk about like internal versus external motivation. Like
Mhm.
when I first started, I wanted to be really good at that job because I valued that. And I would go the extra mile. I'd go in working on
That's you as a
weekends.
person, though. As an athlete, it's like when you show up, you wanna do your best.
Exactly. But when the extra mile then becomes expected and then that becomes asked of you, but nothing else changes, like we can talk, that leads to burnout for a lot of
Mhm.
people. That happened to me there, where I was going in every weekend to do extra work. And then slowly we started to be required to come in
Mm.
most weekends every month. And then out of the 4 weekends every month. What am I doing, man? Nothing.
And you're definitely not being seen, loved, or
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah. So I left that and became a swim coach
Oh,
and
nice.
just started teaching swim lessons, ran a swim clinic, started my first business, so to speak, there at the country club that I was at, and was able to turn that into actually like a six-figure business, which was hilarious because the guy who gave me the opportunity, when I first came to him with the business plan, I was like, "Hey, this is the business plan. What would it cost to rent the pool for the time?" And he liked me. We had a good solid relationship. He was just like, "Dude, we'll give you the pool for free. Like, just we want this on our resume. It'll be a good thing to have. It'll be a feel good thing." He thought he was like throwing me a bone.
Yeah.
And then a year later, when he saw the numbers that I was generating there between me and an assistant and the success that we were having, he was like, "All right, I think we need to renegotiate our thing. Like, now the club wants a cut of what you're doing." I was like, "That's weird because a year ago it sounded like you were betting against me." And that's what I found a lot. Long story short, there is like, when
That's a
I'm
super cool story, though. That's
yeah, like
awesome.
when I'm able to do my thing and stay true to
Yeah.
me and play life on my terms, I'm able to then create and have success also on my terms.
Yep.
When I find myself trying to chase success on other people's terms or things that aren't inherently true to me, that's where I get in trouble. And I think that's where we all get in trouble. We're always constantly being tempted by different things. And that was a period in my life too where that alcohol was that temptation. And I found myself with a lot of this false sense of connection where the only thing I was doing with a lot of the people in my life was blacking out on the weekend. It wasn't a, "Hey, the NBA finals is on tonight on Tuesday night. Do you want to come over and just watch the game and just hang out and exist?"
We're going 0
But
to
it was
100.
like, "Hey, if you want to go all day drinking on Saturday, like
Yeah.
I'm down," type deal.
There's no half-assing
Yeah, and
it.
and I want to be very clear, like sobriety works for me, but it doesn't work for everyone. And I don't view alcohol as this like poison that things like people should absolutely avoid. It just doesn't work in my lifestyle.
It's relationships, right? If you can
Yeah.
have a healthy relationship with it, then go for it. But if it's derailing, and as you said, you start losing this sense of self and sense of identity, or what, then that's where the problem starts to get created. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, in that sense, where okay, post college, we lose our community, we lose our tribe, we not really clear on what our purpose is yet. So it becomes somewhat easier to be
Mm.
attracted to those type of things because it nulls our thoughts and it diminishes our sense of self so we don't feel as less depressed. But then on the back end we become even more depressed where it's just
Yeah.
like this loaded thing to where eventually you said I got to be sober.
Yeah. Well, I was about to say what we resist persists. It's like a rule that we all
I'm sure.
abide by in this life. And oftentimes it is uncomfortable. And what I found through 2020, I like really started to have these challenges. I want more for my life. I saw what I was doing at the country club at that point. I had been promoted to assistant fitness director. I was running a team of about 45, 50 employees underneath me in that regard, was leading their swim program, personal training here, like was doing it all there. And at 25 years old, like that's pretty
Yeah,
badass. It was
that's cool.
cool. Um, but I looked at the schedule that I was on and I fast forward 10 years. I was like, I don't know if I could do this at 35 if I want a relationship, a family, like, and that bring that into the picture. I don't know how that exists because I'm leaving the house at 4:45 and I'm not getting home until 8:15 at night. And then I'm just going to bed and repeating and doing the same thing. And that all that hours are literally just spent commuting or working, and that was it. So I had hit my ceiling in a lot of ways there, and that was when I started to take a step back, reevaluate. Thankfully, for me at least, like, COVID provided this pause for me to actually have some space, sit, and reflect, and start to take action on the things that I was procrastinating on in a lot of ways, and one of the things that I found was I was saying I wanted these changes, and I would be so exhausted on the weekends, yet somehow when I was doing that schedule, I still found a way to go out as soon as I was off on Friday night and stay up until 3 AM with some friends, and then I would sleep until noon, and I would be wrecked the rest of the day, and the only thing I could even conceive of doing work-wise would be rallying and going and doing it all again on
Yeah.
Saturday afternoon with that same friend group, and it was again, don't get me wrong, it was fun,
Yeah.
but there's a difference between, I think, surface level fun and then, like, deeper level of enjoyment, and that was what really I started to explore more and more was this, like, what is deeper enjoyment in life?
So,
What is this
so much
fulfillment
more. There's
that
so much more.
yeah, like, what is it that I'm wanting, right? And what I will say, like, was
This was
super
during
helpful
COVID?
yeah, this is throughout 2020, I started really scaling back how much I was drinking at that time. I started inviting that friend group to other experiences. So, "Hey, do you wanna go get a track workout in because we can't go to the gym still," or whatever it may be, and then, "Hey, I'm trying this boxing class. Do you wanna come try that?
Yeah.
Do you wanna go grab acai bowls
You're providing
here?"
opportunities.
And, like, trying to differentiate, right? It's again, it's easy to all of us, when we're talking human connection, we wanna connect on something as fast as possible. We're meeting a new human for the first time. So we go for the easiest layup of things, whether that be like, "Oh, we're gonna grab a drink together, we're gonna grab coffee," whatever it may be. And then the challenge becomes once we have this initial, like, baseline of you and I have connected over something, the fun begins and we start to try to expand that relationship and expand that connection through newer experiences together. We all have people in our lives that we're like, no, they're just gym bro friends, or they're
Mm.
just drinking buddies, or they're just work buddies. And I'm not saying everyone has to be everything for you, but if you want true, deeper connection and relationship in your life, you have to be willing to try to do different things with the same people. And instead of just always keeping them in these like
Same lanes.
organized lines,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
That's beautiful. I think a lot of people, and maybe it's just because we're in a bubble in Austin,
Mm,
I'm seeing a lot of people craving this. I
mhm.
know the world wants it. At the end of the day, to me, I think the most important thing, and that's why this podcast is about healing, specifically relationships are the most important thing that really can charge up our soul.
Yeah.
Relationships. And I believe just from my parents and their generations and the generations before, like there's just this lack of just like deeper connection than it was hundreds of years ago in these tribes where people were like working with each other and bartering services. And there's just a stronger family oriented villages.
Yeah.
And we just industrialization, capitalism, whatever the things over time, we've lost sight on this. And you put in and then you put in the masculine side of this of the man just not wanting to be vulnerable and connect at an emotional level that it's bred this where we're at today, where whether it's suicide or whether it's just loneliness as a core and people are just separated and angry and pointing
Mhm.
fingers. And what is the answer? The answer to me, there's always multifaceted, but if we were
Yeah.
to absorb it to one thing, it's relationships. And really understanding that, as you said, being able to explore the different levels of those relationships and doing a game night and doing a fitness thing and doing a travel trip and
Mm.
outside of your romantic relationships, having your core people in that inner circle that you can rely on and really can support you and your team, right?
Yeah.
The is so important in this life. And I'm just curious, man. Like I understand COVID and It gave you some time to really sit and understand that. But how have you like navigated that intention as you go over the next 3 years? And I want to, because you mentioned flow earlier, and I
Yeah.
believe I think flow is a it's an avenue to
Mhm.
allow us to be more understanding of what we actually want out of life. How have you used those practices to help you to connect with your people?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think yeah, I mean, you brought up a good point there with men in particular. I heard a quote the other day that was hilariously and unfortunately so true, was that women have friends and men have I was like, "That's pretty spot on in
Damn.
today's world," you know what I mean? Like, it is easier in a lot of ways, unfortunately, to sit and have mics. What I appreciate about our relationship is we have a lot of conversations that aren't recorded and
Yeah.
that are of that level and a lot of different breaths, right? But,
And that's to
you
continue
know
expanding as well.
yeah, so I think how flow plays into this, right? Um, we as humans, we all have what are known as primary flow activities. So those would be like our strengths. Those are the things that come naturally to us. So athletes oftentimes they are an athlete in their respective sport because that sport, newsflash, is their primary flow activity.
Mhm.
I'm able to drop into flow still to this day without having swum consistently in years pretty easily anytime I'm like just dropped back into water. It's literally like riding a bike. Some people find flow in conversation, some people find it in public speaking, you might find it in your line of work. We all have things that are primary flow activities. So in doing primary flow activities, it's easy to then connect with other people that are also share in that. Then we have it's a tiered structure, right? Some things take a little bit more work, secondary, tertiary, all the way down. You can find flow though wherever. It just might not come as naturally to a lot of people. And how it ties together is I like to think of it like a set of keys. So if I have my set of keys here, I'd be fucked if I lose this key because I only have one car key. If we lose a lot of people, if they only focus on that primary flow activity, they are fucked in their life because that's the only way they know how to access that state of being and this sense of really greater self, losing themselves in that bigger picture in a good way. So if we start to prioritize our relationships to build a more well-rounded, holistic sense of self, what we're doing is actually creating multiple spare keys
Mm.
for accessing who we are. And that's why when you look at the model of identity, it is this like the first model of identity when we're first growing up, we're searching desperately for who are we? What's the first thing that I can grasp onto and hold on to? This is true to me. This feels, this fits. I look good in this. That usually happens around like that formative years of like high
Yep.
school, middle school, maybe
Sometimes
even.
not supportive identities.
Yeah. And that's okay. And then if you hold on to this belief with time that I need to be and I can only be this one thing, then it becomes a limiting box. And so that's why the next level of identity, after you go from searching to finding to now starting to understand, it's like clothes. Some clothes fit for certain circumstances, others, you would look silly wearing that to that sort of environment that, or that function. And we can start to holistically look to strengthen our relationships if we want deeper relationships, not just the surface level. Oh yeah, I know Bray. I just see him at the gym. We're just workout buddies, nothing else. Whatever it may be. If we want to deepen that, we have to be willing to start exploring these spare keys
Mm.
and building and embracing multiple identities. Embracing the fact that we can and we should be multiple things. And in fact, the healthier we have multiple identities, the easier it is then to access those strengths. That's
Mm.
why I argue all the time with a lot of current athletes. Have some things going on in your life outside of sport. We saw this clip earlier, NBA Finals going on right now. Jimmy Butler, after game one, was asked, like, what's he doing to mentally reset? And he's like, I'm just like ripping and running with my girl. She's in town. His daughter, they're playing some cards. He's going to do an escape room
Normal
that
life.
night. Like, and he's like, at the end of the day, it's not just about basketball. It was never just about basketball. There's more to life. I'm just a normal human that happens to be really good at basketball. I'm like, that to me is what summed up what I just said for the past 3 minutes is he has multiple sets of keys to access flow and fulfillment in his life, not just through his primary flow activity.
That was cool. That was a cool analogy. I like that. A lot of people don't even have one identity that they connect with.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not consciously aware of it. And that goes down a rabbit hole of, okay, again, not having a sense of self and not living
Yeah.
with purpose and all these different things. But to go back to the root of it and understanding identity, and yes, there's development years, but we create different identities. And that's also another reason why I love fitness and in competition in my 30s, because I'm creating new confidence, new identities within myself still to this day. But I think there is multiple routes that one can take to understand themselves better.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like you using flow, I'm going to stick with that, have allowed yourself to understand yourself better and to go maybe even to a deeper level of your own consciousness.
Mm.
What are some practices that you have worked on that allowed you to create these different identities? Because again, like I think starting with one is important, really identifying yourself with that. But
Yeah.
like in a perfect world, sure, I want all these keys, but I need to find that first key first.
Yeah. And I think starting with looking outside of yourself, right? A practice for me right now that has been a huge part of my life over the past few years and last year in particular has been my faith and just exploring my relationship with God and what that plays a role in my own life and being challenged in like the best way possible by those around me to continue to explore that relationship and how then I can live that forward into the rest of my life. So, I mean, that is one avenue that has worked for me is exploring again, like what is it to be exploring a relationship with something that's bigger than
Yeah.
myself? If you're looking to explore like the question of who you are, ironically, I think it helps to look outside of yourself rather than constantly always looking inward. If you get so frustrated on trying to solve a map, but your like head is in the map and you're just so fixated at where you are right
You're
now,
not looking
you're
surrounded.
not looking around. You can't differentiate between the forest from the trees, whether that be exploring a relationship with God, whether that be even just asking some friends, hey, what am I good at? Or if you don't have friends, ask your family, ask people that are around you on a somewhat frequent basis because they can help to start to give you some answers to feed into a possible solution for you. So I'm constantly zooming in and out in my own life now. I think it's very helpful to take intentional time, zoom out, whether that be like going to church, going to sit and meditate, prayer, like reading scripture, whatever it may be. Those are my moments that allow me to do this duality of both. Zoom out 30,000-foot view. Okay, now taking what the knowledge of what I'm seeing and connecting with here, how do I then zoom back in and apply that in the right now?
Mm.
It gets really tricky. People might hear all of this and they might say, that sounds like a lot of work. I don't know if I have time for that. Or what's the timeline for it? How fast can I do this? And it's tricky, I think, to one, it's challenging to zoom out and see the 30,000-foot view because oftentimes you might not like all of which. And then the real challenge is you zoom back in and you try to fix all of those things all at once. And you and I both know it's not how it works. Not how it works in fitness. That's not how it works in your personal life, your relationships, your professional life, whatever it may be. You can only ever control pieces of the present moment. You can't even control the present moment and everything that's happening right now. I can't control what questions you're going to ask me next on this, right? But I can only control the words that are coming out of my mouth.
And trust in that.
Yeah, and surrender to like whatever
Yeah.
it is that comes up. It's not like I'm sitting here reading off of a phone and be like,
Yeah.
all right, I need to make sure I need to hit this point with Bray. It's no, I'm just gonna surrender to this present moment and trust that the right things are gonna come up and go from there.
Beautifully said. Something that stuck with me, you said after you have this bird's eye view, 30,000 square foot view, you look at yourself and then you get a little bit more clarity and then you put into action. So I think integration is one of the lost
Yeah.
skills that people don't. Like they read this motivation book, they go to this keynote, and they have all this energy and excitement and maybe some more awareness and clarity, but then there's no integration. What does that look like for you when you make these, when you sit back and we'll get to the time illusion here in a second, but like
Yeah.
when you sit back and actually smell the roses and get present and understand yourself better, how do you integrate that immediately?
I try to get really real with myself as to how much can I actually chew in this moment. Those things are all great, like the podcasts, the conferences, the workshops, the coaches, the courses, the like signing up for fitness challenges, whatever it may be, like they're all great and they all serve a purpose. It doesn't mean they always serve a purpose for you right now in this current season of your life. You have to really be able to discern how much is it that I can actually bite off right now and realistically chew. And I always urge what I've been a good practice for me in the past few years in particular is being real with myself in that conversation, not letting my ego say, "Oh, yeah, I can do more. I can do all of this," but say, "All right, maybe you can do all of this. But why don't you commit to what you can commit to right now where you're absolutely 100% confident that you can fulfill and follow through on that implementation? Do that first. Prove that to yourself, and then you can always go back." The analogy I like to use is I'll never forget this place, man. It was in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, which was like 40 minutes outside of Delaware where I went to school. And on Tuesdays, they would do all you can eat sushi. $20. $20. And here's the catch. If you ordered a roll and didn't finish the roll, you had to pay for that full price of that roll plus the $20.
Okay.
And so these rolls were like $15, $20 and as a piece. So as a college kid, you're like, well, it's a steal if I can obviously finish the rolls.
Yeah.
But if I don't, I'm in a really tricky situation because now I'm paying like a $20 meal, but now has become $35, $40 plus tip. That's like, it's a lot to ask
That's
of a
yeah.
college kid. It's a lot to ask even now
Yeah.
sometimes. And so what I learned through that was can always order more. So maybe some days I'll check in and I'll look at my capacity. How hungry am I as I'm going to this restaurant? All right, it's feeling like a confident 4 roll kind of day. So I'll order 4 rolls to start off, eat all of that, and then pause, check in, reevaluate. Okay. Is it 2 more rolls? Is it like another
Mm.
roll? What's going on? And then order another one. Finish that. Order another if I feel, but it's this constant process of check in, take inventory, put into my to-do list what I can actually consume in that day. And I can always knowing that I can always go back for more. The downfall for a lot of people is just they're trying to do too much all at once. They're worried about like I could have gone into that sushi restaurant and been like, I could probably eat 8 rolls today. And maybe I could, but that's more of an ego-driven decision to like then hop on a podcast and be like, Bray, 7 years ago, dude, I would eat 8 sushi rolls at once. It was pretty sick. I'm pretty awesome. As no, but what do I have to gain from that? Nothing. I'll probably just have a tummy ache and it
Yeah.
doesn't actually
Yeah.
mean anything. And that's oftentimes how a lot of us are living our lives is does your to-do list actually have meaningful things on it?
Mm.
I would rather people do 2 to 3 like most important tasks on a
Mhm.
day-to-day basis that actually are quality, deep, meaningful tasks than, oh yeah, man, I today was pretty awesome. I prayed, I meditated, I journaled, I read, I worked out, I went for a walk, I did sauna and ice, and it's like, holy shit.
What was your intention with all
Yeah,
that?
were you going through and just checking
Exactly.
boxes,
Exactly.
or were you going through and really getting the benefit out of all these things?
Yeah.
It's a huge
The
difference.
key thing that it comes with all this is just extreme presence
Mhm.
of understanding, extreme presence, and then I'll add in another layer of trust, of understanding that you are going to make the right choice right now. And if it's wrong, there is no right or wrong in the scenario. You're trusting that everything is going to unfold how it's supposed to unfold.
Mm.
And I think there's outside of the box of wanting things fast and doing a lot, I was guilty of this too, man. I am currently probably the best shape I've been in my life from physical, mental, spiritual, everything in my life. But 6 months ago, I wasn't doing too hot. I was dealing with these allergy attacks. My gut was, I was just inflamed. My adrenals were shot. And what happened was I put on too many hats. I was trying to build a community. I was trying to build an online brand. I was competing at a high level, doing all these things that I felt that I could handle because I handled at some level, but then it just kept, there was no rest season. Because there's chapters where you can do stuff like that if you isolate that energy and you understand yourself. But if you keep going without some type of,
Mhm.
you're gonna drain out. Just and that's the same thing within the world that we live in with content creation and being a creator, of understanding that something you're doing today, you may be good, but if you don't check in, like that, getting that bird's eye view
Yeah.
3 months down the road, and you're still doing that same thing, that's where the stuff starts kicking in. Like
Mhm.
what you do from a month today, whether it's results oriented or negatively habit oriented, you're gonna see it the next month or the
Yeah.
next 2 months. So coming back to that routine with yourself of understanding in the moment, okay, how is my body feeling in this moment? Because I think outside of the ego and wanting to do a lot of things and want to be fast, there's also just like this fear and this expectation driven society, outcome based, and not understanding and not getting attached to a specific goal versus like in the moment, is this right for me?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's one thing that came up there as you were talking is like there's a difference between doing something and doing something. And it can be very tempting in today's world to do something because you get kudos, you get flowers for doing
Yeah, rewards,
anything now in this world because we can post about it on social media. And
dopamine rush. Let's go.
yeah, you know, and it's temptation. It's a quick dopamine hit. It's a, oh my God, like that's so cool. You got a community. It's like, do you though? Like, you threw one workout. I'm not saying this to you, but you throw one workout, you throw one event. It's not a community. That you brought people together, yes, but community is a byproduct of frequency. It's a byproduct of differentiating
Attention.
the experience that happens there, and it's about building those deeper level of connections that is only possible with repeat frequency. There's a difference between going on one date and being like, "Oh my god, I'm in love with this girl. She is the one for me," and then, like, never seeing her again and be like, "I don't understand, like, why didn't it work out?"
Mm.
Versus going on multiple dates, letting things unfold, seeing what happens with time, and being like, "Oh, shoot, her and I have a really solid foundation together." I would take the really solid foundation, but that's only a byproduct of the frequency and the cadence of going deep.
Mm.
That's why team-based sports, or you look at really any community or company that has a true community worth, is places that have built-in frequency and cadence to actual community events, community activations. It can't just be this like one-off thing. And that's really what I'm getting into this year for me is like, how can I, because I've felt like in a lot of ways, I felt like an imposter these past 3 years within the Forever Athlete space as I'm building. So outside looking in, a lot of people are like, "Dude, the community you've built is awesome,"
Yeah.
and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Thank you," but I know it needs
Yeah.
to do it. What's driving me right now is it needs more cadence. It needs more frequency. It needs to bring more people, not even more people, but bringing the same people together more frequently to allow that to actually be cultivated, to
Mm.
build these like super fans, these people that are so bought in that they're going to go tell their friends and their friends about this community. That's how
Mhm.
things grow.
Well, to give love real quick,
Yeah.
I think it's easy. I am the same way, and someone who just wants to create the most for other people and really is
Mm.
invested in that experience and leaving a lasting impact that then trickles to other people in their lives and has this global effect. I think as leaders and the people that we're around, we are centered in that. But at the end of the day, you have started something and it has grown. And most people never do that. And
Yeah.
just the messy action of just moving forward. I just want to give credit. I know you
I
do. I'm just
appreciate it.
like, it's been beautiful to watch. And for anyone out there that just feels like they're missing something and they can't
Mm.
find their community, go build it.
Go build it. Go be. I think people need to be challenged in community a lot more these days. There's very much this like, I want to rent it before I own it
Mm.
mentality in a lot of different ways. It's being applied in a lot of the wrong areas. A lot of In how many
We've
relationships
talked about
do
this
you know what
before.
I
Yeah.
mean? That if you're going in looking for red flags, you're gonna find red flags. And I'm not saying go in blind and like totally ignore red flags, but be able to discern and give yourself space to differentiate between a red flag and just some maybe possible tension to work through.
Just be open. Be
Yeah.
open to growth because you can't create a perception of something until you actually go and experience it. You can create this assumption,
Yeah.
but it's not a real perception of how your body's going to respond if you don't actually go and experience it
Yeah.
yourself.
And I think some places, some people you'll come across in your life, you'll intuitively know
For sure.
deep down, like right off the bat, whether that person is for you or worth exploring more. That's not what I'm saying, is
Yeah.
like those people, yeah, don't continue to dive down that path. But if it feels good and more signs point towards yes, don't hyperfixate on that one thing that you might not love about that place or that person. Go and explore it a little bit more. Give it a little bit more chances because that's where growth gets to happen.
Mm. Speaking of exploration, I want to go down the flow route one more time.
Heck yeah.
And I want to contextualize it with this illusion of time,
Mm,
this relationship with time. And it's been my experience, myself guilty in past versions and sometimes in down or upregulated versions of myself, of having this construct of not having enough time to do something.
mm,
And on the other side, belief that a lot of people say, we've all heard it, life's happening so fast. I don't like that saying. I don't like that saying because I think if we're in flow and we're present, we're absorbing more out of life. But I want to get your thought process. And there's like the idea of, oh, I don't have 10 minutes to meditate, then you should meditate for an hour, right? There's just like this perception of, oh, I'm going to lose time if I go do these things. But the reality is it gives you more time and more
mm.
energy. And I just want to I'm going to leave that more of an open-ended thing
Yeah.
just to give you a perspective on that, I guess, belief that people have created with this relationship with time and what your thoughts on that is.
Yeah. I feel like we should have done this earlier, but to contextualize what flow actually
Yeah,
is,
I was waiting for that to come.
it's when you are just hyper present on the task at
In the
hand
zone.
and nothing else inherently matters and you're locked in and there is actually a warping sense of time. Now, it's not blanket like 100% of the time when you're in flow, time flies by that. Sometimes for some people, for some activities, that's exactly what it feels like. It felt like you pick your head up and you're like, holy crap, where did the last hour, 2 hours, 3 hours go? That was like, I got totally lost. Then for other people, it's like time slowed down so much where they can start to see athletes like tennis players will describe in matches. They were like, yeah, I don't know. I was just in flow and I could see the ball going to where it was going before it was there. I just knew it was going to be there. And I had all the time in the world to get over there, even though those things are happening at such a split second level of action. And so to address this construct of time, it's once you start to understand how you can leverage flow in your favor, one way or the other, if you have seemingly a shortage of time, how can you construct your days in a way that allows for more flow, conducive activities to be present? And then it's understanding flow comes in this cycle of 4 stages. You go through struggle because it's not necessarily like
It's not
I
natural.
can just sit down and get into
Yeah.
flow. Just like most athletes, they can't just walk onto the pitch and just start playing amazing off the bat,
The
right?
best ones can get there faster, but
Yeah, but there's always a warm up period, which is the struggle phase. And so you get your body, your mind loose. You're working out the kinks. You're going through it, right? It's like when you go to a workout, same thing. You don't jump right into PR, that bench press. You're going to go in and warm up the shoulders, activate the chest a little bit, maybe do some push up, whatever it may be. Get yourself ready. And then you're going to go into a release phase where you give yourself a little bit of rest, some time to collect yourself. And then you're going to go into, okay, now I'm like, it's time to go for a PR. And then the best ones know. And then on the other side of that, there's recovery, right? You don't go right from PRing bench to then go trying to PR a squat right after, right? Okay, I'm going to give myself some time to recover. And I think the most effective people in today's world understand that different activities have different energy associations with them. And so you can start to strategically plan those activities during, whether it be like throughout the micro of the day to day or throughout the week to week, the month to month, the bigger things. Like I worked with a client of mine recently where we took his travel sales schedule and mapped out his whole year together based off of that. He told me that these big sales showroom conferences are really taxing on his nervous system, and he feels absolutely shot after them. I was like, "All right, cool. We're gonna treat those as if those are like your championships. So we're gonna do everything we can to manage your energy on a
Mm.
day-to-day basis all around those things." Just like an athlete does. NBA players focus all year on managing their energy in and around playoffs. That doesn't mean that regular season games don't have importance. They do. They still need to show up and do a job on those, but they know that
They're
the real
building.
value is in the playoffs.
Yep. I want to real quick. I'm gonna go super micro and create an example for people on
Yeah.
how to develop relationships with specific things. So let's say on I want to optimize. I'm just gonna go very broad. I just want to optimize my flow. My goals don't matter in this context. I
Mhm.
just want to optimize my energy. What are specific things that I need to have a better relationship with?
Mm.
So obviously, the first one comes up to me is social media.
Yeah.
We have our relationships with friends, people, work. What is that management of energy, and what are some good habits to have to
Yeah.
develop better relationships?
I think even deeper than relationship with social media, relationship with self. I think that's where it really boils down to is how can you spend time with self in a way that's not scary? Why are you checking social media? Is it because you're bored? Is it because you're looking for distraction? You're looking for dopamine? What's the precursor, the
It's
trigger
true.
to activate that behavior? And oftentimes is rooted in something reflective of self. So spending time with that. But things to be mindful of, yeah, it's like relationship with distractions. And I kept talking about it earlier, that difference between short-term enjoyment versus or short-term pleasure versus long-term enjoyment. It's very easy to get those two diluted and mixed up in today's world because the short-term pleasure feels so good. Like watching porn can feel so good. Taking shots can feel so good. Like all of these things
Yeah,
can
all the
feel
dopamine
so
hits.
good. It doesn't mean they're good for you. And so when you're able to trust, and to me, like this is where faith would play a role. It's like having faith in God and in my relationship there means, okay, I can really weather this current temptation of immediate pleasure and be like, all right, I'm not gonna surrender to the pleasure. I'm gonna surrender to something bigger than myself and say, okay, what should I do in this moment? Give myself the space to be able to discern and then say, okay, what would the action look like if I were choosing longer term enjoyment here in my life, longer term fulfillment? All right, okay, maybe that looks like having that difficult conversation with my partner versus I'm not liking how things are going there. So I'm just gonna retreat, shut down, and watch porn or watch
Yeah, yeah.
something of
I'll
that
get a
that
dopamine hit.
nature and get a dopamine hit that way. So I'd say for people, it's like being able to discern that, being mindful of what are the things that you are predispositioned to distract yourself with, and then how can you navigate your own relationship with self to improve the relationship with those things that are distractions for you.
Mm,
And I'm not saying distractions are always bad too. Sometimes it is a good thing to just veg out and watch a TV show. You don't have to be hyper
for sure.
focused on all the time.
For sure, but I think Gen Pop usually are on the other end of the
Yeah.
spectrum, and I completely agree. I love a great movie and a great TV show. I spend a lot of time doing that type of stuff intentionally.
Yeah.
But I also have a self check of, oh, maybe I need to get some other things done too, and understand that maybe this isn't the right choice for me right now. It gets really back to we didn't get specific on, everyone has different goals in life,
Yeah.
but having your goals and what you want out of your life, that plays into that decision making of the short term pleasure and the long term enjoyment.
Yeah.
That gets filtered through that system of, okay, this is something I enjoy that's going to make me feel more fulfilled and enjoyed in the long term. So I should not make this decision. Or maybe, yeah, maybe it's okay to have short term enjoyment too.
Yeah.
Go get that
Yeah, that's
smoothie.
what I
Go
say.
get that
I'm
ice
not
cream.
saying all of them are some have more lasting
But this is where it gets challenging. This is
impacts.
where it gets challenging. I
Yeah.
agree. But it gets back to you have to do that every day. Because
Yeah.
one day you can do it, and maybe we chose to go on the short term side, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But if then we do that every single day, we're never creating the long term dream or life that we want.
I had a coach tell me in high school once, he was like, think of it like your bank account. Because if you miss practice, it's like a withdrawal from the bank. But every time that you show up, you're depositing, you're putting in
Hmm.
time, you're putting in time, putting in work. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, you're good as long as a majority of the time you're depositing more than you're withdrawing.
Paying your dues.
And that's what I see now. There's nothing wrong with ice cream. But if I have ice cream every single day or multiple times a day, yeah, there's something wrong with my relationship with ice cream that I might need to try to improve and work on. But you're the sum of your habits and your actions. You're not a result of just one singular action or habit in your life.
Yeah, I love that. Pay those dues.
Yeah.
But I think even with all those choices, make sure it's intentional. Don't have ice cream, then have guilt because you had ice cream. If you made that choice,
Own
own
it.
that choice,
Yeah.
love that choice. Yeah, let's love that choice. Don't have judgment around it. Speaking of long term enjoyment,
Mm.
you have recently created some form, I'll call it a longer term relationship
Yeah.
that I would love to tap into. And it's with a friend of both of ours, Miss Serena. Shout out Serena. And me and Cory have this running joke that I have actually not seen them together yet. So my mind can't accept that it's real. Just kidding. I know it's real. But I want to go into it because you guys started off as friends,
Mm.
and we navigated this conversation of these deep, impactful relationships. And it seems that obviously you guys have grown into a romantic one, which is very
Yeah.
deep and impacting, but it started from a friendship level. And I am also exploring that. I'm seeing other people explore that, of like going down this route of being a friend first and developing this friendship and this trust and this container. And then sometimes it evolves into what you're in now. And yeah, I want to understand a little bit that process for you guys and where it started and where these connections of, oh, maybe we should go down this route and now where you're at today.
Yeah. I think what's beautiful when you explore like different sex friendships, right? Oftentimes when you're doing it for the right reasons, you're not feeling a pressure to perform and your intentions are more pure. You can show up more as authentically you. And when you are open and surrendered to those spaces, you allow people to start to see you for who you really are. But like we said earlier, to bring this full circle, there's a difference between showing up and like I'm opening my door to you with this expectation that you'll do the same for me down the road, or I'm going to buy your coffee tomorrow because I expect the next time we go to coffee, you're going to buy my coffee. And and again, this like tick for tack. And that's often how we approach a lot of romantic relationships. For me, it was really challenging coming from the DC area, man. Like a lot of the dating scene there was rooted in resume contests. It felt
Mm.
like a job interview. I would go on these dates. They would ask me, so where did I go to school? What are my goals? What am I working towards? Like how much money I'm making, whatever it may be. And what I think has been so beautiful with exploring my relationship with Serena is like she challenges me in a lot of ways, but she's never challenged me in a way that I have felt the need to perform as someone that I'm not around her. And she's actually been very good at calling me out since it's turned romantic at different points where I maybe revert to that. So whether that be like I'm picking a restaurant and I'm like, "Hey, I wanna spoil you, I wanna go to this restaurant," and she's checking me like, "You don't have to do this, right?" I'm cool with a P. Terry's date and the lights afterwards.
That's cool.
I'm like, "Huh." Now that I think about it, yeah, that's actually what I would rather do as well. Or just like, giving me space to actually reflect on my own actions and say, "Is this truly rooted in what's true to me?" Versus me trying to perform and put on these theatrics. And that's where I'd say was so challenging in relationship these days is there's an abundance of choice. There's this clock ticking, whether like actually ticking or made up in our head, that
Creates this pressure.
puts that pressure on it. But if we can approach it to man, like a kid, like I look back at how I first found swimming and just I didn't get into it because I wanted to be Olympian. I got into it because it was fun. And then over time I allowed that relationship to blossom and like then I had really something to work through and work for, work towards. I felt even more deeply in love with it. And that's what I found in her and I's relationship is over time, because we had that friendly foundation, I felt safe around her. I felt like I could talk to her about things that I never in a million years would have thought about talking with someone within a month of dating, let alone not even officially dating yet
Yeah.
type deal.
Yeah, man. That's beautiful.
I appreciate it. It's been really fun. It's been really challenging too. Like I tell her often, I'm like, I'm really grateful for her respecting my own journey, but also challenging me in like the best way possible to go forward and explore different parts of who I am and in my life, separate of our relationship. But that those are the things that bring us closer together too.
I want to dive into that more, but one thing I just want to say, because you brought up the pressure that
Mm.
gets placed on us, that we place on ourselves.
Yeah.
I think there's layered with that also what's created. And I've noticed myself and some realizations as I'm getting out into the space of creating this expectation
Mm.
of where something might go versus taking it how I feel in the moment that this person is making me feel, separate of any type of future based things.
Yeah.
Because your mind is fickle and it can fixate on these one maybe red flag or negative thing that you see, or just, yeah, any type of quality that you see. And then you allow it, the mind goes rampant down this path like, oh, this is never going to work out. But a lot of beautiful things organically blossom if when you can trust and feel sure there's going to be red flags or red lights, whatever you want to call it, that
Yeah.
are probably not the ones for you. But sometimes a lot of those relationships, they're not going to start off with this blossoming, beautiful energy like that knight in shining armor. I'm sure there's spaces and there's worlds like that, but I think most relationships don't start like that. It's a slow burner that builds and builds, but it's built off you trusting yourself in the moment and really listening to what your body is telling you.
Yeah. And I would argue like that's true. And you actually get closer and speed up that process when you lean into those things.
Yep.
When you lean into those more difficult conversations where every part of you is like this is going to be really tough. I don't want to talk about this with my partner.
Yeah.
I'm going to run this way instead. Again, I'm going to shut down versus open up. It's easier to shut down.
It's
You're
easy.
saving yourself from this potential. Okay, she might not recognize or understand me.
Yeah.
But guess what? She's definitely not going to recognize or understand you if you don't actually tell her anything. So,
Because you're not showing up as your true self, and that's gonna,
yeah,
from our experience, and we did it with the alcohol days, that it builds over time, and it
yeah,
creates resentment and no self love and things of that nature. What I'm also like, I want to understand because you, similar to my space, is a very busy man as a creator, as building brands and building community. There's a lot of energy, and
mm,
as you said, she has given you the space to really focus and have the freedom, which is very masculine. Masculine, we want to be free and be able to serve our purpose and our mission. I think myself, I'm speaking out, and I know other men can relate with this in our space of some fear around our purpose being diminished by investing time into a romantic relationship. And I'm just trying to understand you in this case of like you guys, organically happened. You guys started dating. Was there some resistance towards that because of your lifestyle? And how have you communicated yourself to be able to, again, be your man of purpose and be you?
yeah. At one point, I would have told you yes. Um, I think a few years ago, and talk about that feeling that need, like if that need to perform is what's driving my day to day action, absolutely yes, there would be a lot of fear there. However, what's been really freeing has been realizing that you are worthy of just whatever by simply just being. And so, because you are here, you're worthy of exploring this. And it's really our obligation, I think, as men, especially men that are striving and trying to set an example and lead in this world, that you can lead without having it perfect altogether. And so I would have told you years ago that, yeah, like, no way I'm getting in a relationship. My company's not successful yet. I don't have a reoccurring revenue of X amount of dollars on a monthly basis yet. And But once I get there, then I'll explore dating. It's like I need to get it to a certain level. Well, again, with her, like I've never felt that need. But guess what? She not even encourages me. Like being with her motivates me to reach those milestones more because I know of what I can provide by doing so for her, for ourselves, for myself, for the collective us in relationship and whatever that looks like down the road as well. But that's what I would say has been the difference. It's not a rooted from I need to have a certain level of success, then I'll pursue, but rather if you can just understand that you're worthy and you have this responsibility actually to pursue right now, the rest of the stuff will take care of itself, really, with time.
The right now, the here, the right now. We are right now, and we have just had a beautiful conversation. I want to wrap this thing up. And how I would like to wrap this up is I would like you to wrap up this podcast and act as if you are looking at this camera intercom to the people, providing them a message of hope, of blessings, of love, based off the context of what we talked about today around relationships, around sports, around
Mm.
community, around flow. What would be that message to the people?
Yeah, man, I think when you really boil it down to just life in general, it's really simple. Just be where your feet are at, play where you're at right now in this moment, and know that it is always bigger than you. But you can be rooted in this duality of this like 30,000-foot view, but where you are right now, and have faith and trust that you're going in the right direction. Because when you take confident action in the now, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does get to be towards a perfect destination. So don't get caught up in timelines. Don't get caught up in having to prove something. You're worthy simply by being here. Explore what that means to you and start to dive in that relationship with self, relationship with something bigger than you as well, and see what happens in that process.
Yes. All
There we go.
right, y'all, that is a wrap from today's episode. All I got to say is stay blessed.